Any responses I had. Howdy, Rich.
Today I am in the shed with a very special person, my old man.
My old man. Real special way.
Get that title now.
He's old man.
This is
Should be
my
kissing my ass right now.
this is my dad, and my dad has a very special collection of motorcycles that I have grown up around. Over the last couple of years, Dad spent quite a bit of time restoring and getting these bikes up to scratch and just building quite a bit of a beautiful collection. So I just wanted to film it and basically capture it all on film while with him working in the shed. So here you go.
Better looking than him too.
This is number 20. 20 out of 3,000.
Yeah. M2020. It's a JH2 RC30 10L, so it was the 20th one made. It's quite a story to this one. It was the motorcycle shop, Delamo, had it in the window. It was designated to be a race bike. At the time, Delamo had borrowed some money from a gentleman called Peter Savalas. Peter had a collection that nobody knew about. I got friendly with Peter through working on his old VWs, servicing them, and he used to bring in his split windows, and just got friendly with the old guy. He was a hell of a nice guy. Italian woman, people he knew, mafia, ex-bike racers, he knew them all. There was a story to everything. And it used to be quite a joke in the end, because I always asked Pete, what's the story behind this? What's the story behind this? We used to sit down and just have tea and talk. And he had this and a 851 sitting on a bench. And then there was two Ferraris, V12 Ferraris sitting in his shed. And he was one of the mechanics for Ferrari Le Mans for the 24-hour and stuff like that. And then he went on to Porsche and everything else. But Pete was very, very secretive and lived in a shady part of town. One day he finally invited me over, and he had this 851 and some other bikes lying around, and I was like, wow, Pete, like your Ferraris, like your collection. And he was like, quite tight-lipped about it. But anyway, as we became more and more friends, he says, I'm thinking of selling the RC. I said, well, Pete, what's the story behind it? He says, well, it was going to be a race bike, but those bozos owed me money, so I went and collected the RC30, so it never saw the racetrack. And he says, here it's sit ever since. Well, I got it at about 4,500 miles. So I tend to believe him on that. It did have a handmade Yoshimura system on it by Pops. And I opted for going back to the stock pipe, but never saw the track. Yeah, but that's how this came to be in my shed. I've had it for 25 years. It's pretty, eh? Not as pretty as this. Next part of history.
So which one are you undressing now?
It's the 888 SP. The reason why I liked this bike was after 98 I rode with Doug Poland in an endurance 24-hour endurance event, and always wanted to get this back, purely because of the friendship we had, and I loved the bike. So I went, when I was back in New Zealand, the guy that I'd sold it to offered me back to buy it back, so I did. 27 years later, and it's only done about 5,000 Ks on it since he had it. 5,000 miles.
So your mate bought it off you in the US and then brought it back to New Zealand?
Yeah.
And so you raised your kids for 25, 26 years in the States and then moved back to New Zealand. Moved back to New Zealand in 2010 and then bought it back off him in 2021.
Yeah. So I went through it, pulled the motor and had some work done to it, and here it sits. Pretty special. Marvett wheels. A lot of go fast goodies on it. It's got a billet clutch.
Racer clutch.
High compression pistons. Valves. I haven't gone to the SPO cam. I wanted to keep it just nice to ride.
Yeah, SPO would be too angry for the road.
Yeah, it's got a 55mm titanium race system with Da Vinci titanium cans, rear sets, an Olin steering damper, and a bunch of carbon fibre.
Pencil sketch of Doug Poland
on one of these. I think he was 3 or 4 times world champion. And it's a pencil sketch, and Doug signed it for me. It's got his signature on it anyway, but that was just a production, and then he actually hand signed it for me.
You were his old teammate, eh?
Yeah, just for the endurance rates. You want to keep on this era and go to the 998. When it came out, it changed the whole evolution of motorcycling.
That was the first, like, true super sports, wasn't it?
Super bike, street bike, that was fully fed and very, very sexy to look at. I just remember people riding along on the road and stopping and couldn't believe how beautiful they are. Ducati nailed it.
Yeah, definitely with these.
And that's coming after, some pretty exotic machines.
Such as the 888.
And they brought these out and it was just a showstopper.
Well, because that was the Cagiva factory, wasn't it? At the time.
Cagiva was part of Ducati at the time, I believe.
All it glitters is gold, and she's buying the stairway. There she knows if the stores are all closed, with a word she can get.
You can't have a beer, you're too young. Keta.
Alright, so the
Story on this one, 1974, 900 SS. Basically as original as I could get it. I keep it. It's the only bike I've been part of, my son and I, to fully restore this. 8 years of doing. Got it back to this. So you see by the photos it was left outside for 20 something years. Had grass growing out of the instruments and out of the cabs. It was nearly past the point of no return. So 8 years, we've got this back. Belonged to a friend of mine. Belonged to a friend of mine down in Hawke's Bay. Owned it for a big portion of its life. It's quit on him one day. He couldn't even get it going, so he parked it outside and forgot about it. So I went round there when I was on holiday and saw it still sitting in the backyard. Said to him, I either steal it or you sell it to me. He said, and you steal it, I'll shoot you. Which he probably would have, but then it came up that he was looking for a new competition rifle and offered to, if I bought that for him, then the bike was mine, so I did it. So here we are, and thanks to a lot of the old Spears Italia and Gowan Lock, Bevel Heaven, Steve from Bevel Heaven, Magic, really all keen to just see these guys, these beauties, back on the road. And this is back on the road.
Fucking hell.
All right, this is a 1974 RG500 thoroughbred. It's an actual Grand Prix machine. Came about this one with the owner of the race team, Corona Honda, at the time. Called me and he said he's found some bikes in a shed of a guy that was in Hollywood, needed some money. He had 3-4 bikes there that he was trying to sell all at once. One was a TZ700, from what we believe was Mike Baldwin's NSR 500, and this RG. Well, at the time, this is the only one I could afford. I would have gone for the TZ or the RG preferably, but I didn't have the money for that. We spent the afternoon at this guy's place in Hollywood, putting gas in the machines and actually getting them fired up to see if they ran, because he believed they all did. And made him an offer and walked away with it.
So, how did it end up with Pat Hannon's signature and...
Looking through history, the owner that I went in with buying these bikes said to me he knew Pat and knew where he was, and said it'd be cool because Pat was destined to be world champion at the time riding one of these, coming out on top of Barry Sheen and others. Pat was very, very fast. New Zealand saw him down here doing the Marlborough series. He did rather well there on one of these, and I said, well, I'm keen to get it done in Pat's colours, and went up and saw him. He hand signed the tank and gave me some of his original. At the time he was sponsored by Penthouse Rizzler. Gave me some original graphics, photos, and had a good old yap to him. So it was, yeah, it's kind of unique. I also managed to pick up the Works forks that were on Pat's bike at Isle of Man. They had a slight bend in them. I straightened them, put them all together. So those are hand-cut billet forks. Not hand-cut, but cut billet forks that were on Pat's bike at the time he crashed it. So, and unfortunately ended his racing career. So, yeah, that's it. So flat 4 with rotary valve, carburetors feeding each cylinder, 4 separate cranks, Unfortunately, they were a lot harder to ride than the reed valve motors that Yamaha produced at the time. So, yeah, essentially the Yamaha TZ became the bike of choice.
These were just off and on, eh?
They had just a light switch. Only 70, 80 horsepower, but very light, hence a factory bike. R radiator in the front. Just a bit of memorabilia. More photos from Pat Hennon. And Pete and I went to a MV Augusta day at Willow Spring. Some money lined up there. I had a 900 super light. So this was before this. The super light I used to ride around Los Angeles and in the mountains, etc. with some friends. We went up to Laguna Seca. This would have been 90, end of 94, 95 maybe. And we were sitting watching a race, well, standing by a fence watching a race, all us friends together. One of the guys turned to me and he says, "You can ride. If you're going to race, what class would you want to ride in?" I turned to him and I said, "I would win this 250 class." And it was a GP 250 class. Rich Oliver would have been the hot ticket at this stage. Rich Oliver and Nick Einash, a bunch of people like that. And he said, "Well, here's a check for 20 grand, go and buy yourself a bike. Put your money where your mouth is." So we went and bought a bike and went road racing got my pro license and we went pro racing in about 8 months. Picked up a TZ 250. And then we did a whole season in 96 where we sported as a privateer and finished twice on the podium and 7th in the country. Quite happy with that. Then the kids came along. Things slowed down rapidly.
Kiwi boy. Thrashing the Americans in the West, eh?
First time on the front grid. Sitting down with the radio announcers at the time. Bullshit. That was my second podium. Rich Oliver wearing one of my shirts. He was cool. Rich Oliver here. Randy Renfro. Me on the front row.
So what have we got? We've got the NSR 500.
Yeah.
RG 500.
XR63, that was a works bike. Virginio Ferrari won the world championship on that bike. I rode that bike that day.
What's that?
That's my RG before I painted it.
Oh, so that's the one downstairs.
Yeah, up here.
Ah, cool.
So Kent Kunisadu did the article.
Who photoshopped that?
Fucking hell. Oh, same eyes and everything.